Oh my god. Alright, folks. We gotta move on to the big show.
The big one.
Dune Part 2.
Yes.
Just watched it. Do we want to start off with a pre-discussion grade?
Yeah, I think that's good, because then we can always go back and say after our discussion the grade went up or down.
I'm going to say B+.
I'm going to say B+ as well.
Yeah.
I can't look at it and say it's an A. I think my overwhelming feeling as I was going through the movie was I kind of like the first Dune more.
Oh, yeah. That was a given. I think
yeah.
the first Dune I gave an A too. So.
Well, I think the first Dune just benefited from the visuals being more arresting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here when you have the visuals, you're looking for some of the visuals, but not all the visuals hit, but some of them still do. I really like at the beginning of the movie when they have that strike team that has like this anti-gravity thing where they just kind of like hop up a cliff face. I was like, this is a really nice moment. I like this moment.
And like when they're attacking the first spice vehicle and the explosion of the ship and everything.
Yeah.
It looked really and you know it's mostly practical.
And when they come in and do that effect that they did in the first one where the bomb is going through the shield and then explodes, but then the shield catches the explosion.
Yeah.
They do that to great effect here because everybody fucking loved that. I don't know that there were as many great visuals in this one as there were in the last one. But also, again, I'm already, you know, like when I look at Arrakis in this one, I looked at Arrakis in the last one. So any moment I'm like, wow, I already had that moment last movie. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it looks so cool. It's like, it looks like Arrakis.
Do you want to do the first part of this spoiler free and then we'll hit some spoilers at the end? I mean, it's a book.
It's a book.
It's not really a spoiler. Yeah, it's a fucking book. We're just going to fucking talk
about it. We won't necessarily do spoilers explicitly, but I don't think that this is going to be a spoiler-free review.
Yeah. So, I got to say, what's keeping me from making it an A is I actually had an issue with some pacing and editing of this movie. Like, I mentioned to you a few times, that first hour really was sludge, because they dealt a lot with the love between Zendaya and Chalamet and kind of his training, which
they rushed through that training.
They rushed, like when he said you need to go there and come back, and then he gets halfway and there's Zendaya, and then they just move on to the next fucking thing.
What was that?
That was the editing part I'm talking about. That happened a lot in this movie where it's like they say they're going to do one thing, and then the next scene they've already moved on to something else.
They did that with Lady Jessica, over and over again, where they were like, oh, she has to do this.
Yes.
And she is talking to her unborn baby about her machinations. And then we cut away to Timothée Chalamet for 20 minutes, and then we cut back, and it's been months, and she's more pregnant, and she has done all the things that she said she was going to do. We just didn't watch her do any of them. It's just, she suddenly has this army of fervent followers that believe everything she says. No, I didn't notice that so much when I was watching it, but you're fully right.
Well, like you're saying, like Atreus finally agrees to go south, even though he knows that's the wrong idea. They show them on the sandworm, and then the next scene is him walking into that temple, and it's like, well, no, they show people on the sandworm, and then the very next scene is him walking across the desert, and then into that temple. And it's like
he went from saying, "I don't want to do this," to, "Well, if Destiny's going to make me do it, I might as well get it done."
And then it was like a 5-second of them on a worm, and then the next thing you know, he's walking into the temple in the southern area.
He says, "I'll go south," and she says, "I'll love you forever unless you change." And he says, "Okay, I won't change." And then he immediately goes and does the ceremony.
It fucking changes.
That he knows will completely change his personality.
But then when he walked in the temple, and there's that creepy woman who's like, you're not supposed to be here.
Get out.
And then he says something. He said like one thing, like, I'm expected.
Yeah.
And then the next scene, she has her cloak off and she's holding the thing to his face. It's like, you kind of missed some stuff.
It was cut weird there.
It was so cut weird. I'm glad you noticed it too.
And, on the Harkonnen planet, there were a lot of moments of that.
Yes.
Of like, visually, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I don't understand it conceptually.
Yes.
I don't understand why the lighting changes so drastically, but only this one place. Is it the black sun? You guys mentioned that you have a black sun that you're really proud of. Is that why it all looks different? But it doesn't look different anywhere else. It's just in the stadium.
Yeah.
So does the stadium have some kind of aura around it that makes it all black and white? I don't know.
And I think they missed an opportunity here. I can't believe I'm saying this about Denis Villeneuve, who I think is brilliant, especially with visuals. Okay, if it's black and white, it's fine. But when he's killing people, maybe show like bright red, like a flash. I think it was a missed opportunity to really get that striking because it really did kind of.
When it was
dull.
It was hard to understand what was going on.
Yeah, I had no fucking idea.
It was like we were introduced to this guy, who I thought it was Bill Skarsgård coming in. It's not. It's
Austin
Elvis.
Butler.
It's Elvis
Who
Presley.
I gotta say was fucking awesome.
He was very good.
He was really good.
He was very good. But when he full kisses Stellan Skarsgård on the mouth,
I
was like, I'm really glad this isn't Bill Skarsgård. I'm really glad this isn't Bill Skarsgård. There were a lot of really great visuals. There were also a lot of moments that I thought were going to be something, and then they're nothing. So I thought Jameis, who's played by Babs from Dr. Mbenga from...
Yep.
I thought that he was going to be like this spiritual, person, because I just watched the first Dune last night to prepare for this, and you see him in all these visions that Paul is having, and you're like, oh, so this is going to be the guy that's going to lead him through the desert, and then he kills him at the end of the first movie. I'm like, okay, I guess not, but maybe he'll be like the spiritual guy, like, I killed you, so your spirit is going to inhabit me, and we're going to work together, and you're going to teach me stuff. No. And they reference it, but it's not him, it's Zendaya, and I'm like, okay, all right. I don't really get this. And then they bring atomic weapons into it, and I'm like, I don't know if this is from the book, but this very much breaks my sci-fi coda.
I'm fairly certain that is in the book.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I read the book, but like the majority, I do give these two movies credit as one. They paid a lot of homage, and they did a really good job of bringing the book onto the screen, kind of similar to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Where you're going to have a couple little changes, but the meat and potatoes and the feeling of everything was there.
It was one of those things where unless your movie takes place on Earth, it's like how I had this issue in sci-fi when anybody's referred to as a human when we don't know that, what happened with Earth. If it's like, and this happens in Star Wars when they refer to people as human. I'm like, how does that work? And then is Obi-Wan not a human then? Is that what you're implying? Is Padme not human because she's Nabooian? But how would that change? I don't understand. And so when they're like, they keep on saying, Paul Atreides, this human from blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. And then they bring up atomic weapons. And I'm like, I would so much rather if this was just like a radial bomb. Like, you just call it a radial bomb, and it's just a big bomb. And you don't get into the atomic stuff, because then I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with, what was the movie where they dropped atomic weapons, and then there was no fallout? There was no radiation.
Fucking pretty much every movie that they drop atomic weapons.
But there was one recently that we watched for the show, and we were like, how is there no atomic fallout from these bombs? You make this big deal about these being atom bombs.
Oh, no, you talked about, when we talked about Sum of All Fears, the Ben Affleck, Jack Ryan movie.
That
where they set the bomb off, and we just talked about that.
Even then, they also talk in that movie about how it's a low radiation.
Yeah,
like, there was a sci-fi movie where at the beginning, one of the very first things that happens is that a bunch of atomic bombs are dropped, and then there's no radiation. I think it's a Marvel movie of some kind.
Hey, this is Alfred the editor. I realized what it was. We were talking about Secret Wars. That was where the bomb went off. And it should have been a big deal because it was a nuclear weapon, but it wasn't.
And there's just no radiation. There's no nothing. You're like, so then why were they atomic bombs? If there's no radiation, there's other things that go with atomic weaponry than just big boom. So if you're going to reference that, why aren't you going to have that be a part of the plot at all? And they kind of hinted at it where Zendaya in one vision has like this really radiation scarred face. But again, that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't really end up evolving into anything. And I agreed. We talked a lot about this on the way home. I don't have anything against Zendaya. This continues to cement for me that she's not a great actress. No. And she's not bad. She's not a bad actress. She's just not a very good actress. Yeah. You look at women in superhero movies. I always go back to Michelle Williams in Venom. Michelle Williams is a great actress in a absolutely god-awful shitbag of a movie. And she's not bad. And she's not just playing herself. She's playing the role. And Zendaya here, we were talking about how she was basically Zendaya the Rock Johnson. Of just like, oh, so you're just playing yourself.
It was Mary Jane with blue eyes.
To the degree where, like, so many other things are happening. This was something that genuinely bothered me. So many other things are happening. You have Javier Bardem over here doing stuff and pronouncing things and having an accent. And you have all these other Fremen who have accents and have personality and all these. And then you have Zendaya who fully breaks from all that.
Yeah.
She doesn't look like any of the other Fremen. She doesn't sound like any of the other Fremen. She doesn't speak like any of the other Fremen. She has these very vocal political views. And it was just Mary Jane all over. Not Mary Jane, excuse me.
Yeah,
Michelle.
Michelle.
All over again.
Yeah.
Of just like, what is this?
Yeah.
What's happening? It didn't help that we saw the remake of Jules et Jim in the beginning where Zendaya as not Serena Williams, is teaching 2 boys the arts of love and tennis. And I was just like, okay, so I came into this movie with that in my mind, and then I'm watching her for that first hour, and I'm just like, why? First off, she doesn't seem like she was in the last movie. She seems like a very different person than she was in the last movie.
And I think one of the problems is now that she's in, I'm using quotation fingers, the it girl right now.
Yeah.
They laid way too much into her character, and it took away from the mother.
Oh, she was barely in it.
And it's like, she's kind of the biggest part of his growth. She's the one that gets him to become what he is.
She's the actual villain of all of this.
Yeah, she's the
one actually pulling the
villain.
strings and making all these things happen. And you have a moment where you feel bad for her. Again, because Rebecca Ferguson is a good actress.
Yeah, it's a very good actress.
But also, at the beginning, when they make her the Holy Mother, and she has to basically renounce her entire being, and they don't really give her an option. They're like, you're the only one that can do it, and you were brought here by God, so you're going to be our Holy Mother. And she's like, I don't want to. And they're like, well, you can either do that or die. So those are your options. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then we go back to Zendaya, and Zendaya's just doing this whole like, oh, religion is fake. Religion is how you control people. Religion is the opioid of the masses. She's out there basically playing Karl Marx. And I'm just like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
This wasn't a thing. This wasn't a thing last time. It was the Marty McFly chicken of this movie. All of a sudden, in the second movie, Marty McFly gets triggered by the statement, you're a chicken.
You're a chicken, yeah.
And you're just like, what? When did this happen? Where's this coming from? This doesn't make any fucking sense. It hasn't even been like a long time since the end of the first movie. It just happened.
Yeah.
So where's this coming from? Zendaya is just suddenly like, you fools are all following this false prophecy, and you need to just, this is how they control us, and all these. And maybe that's in the book, but it just felt inauthentic with what we had learned about this character. But then again, I also think about this character, what have we learned about her? At one point, I was like, I think she's more symbolic of the planet Arrakis than as an actual physical character.
Yeah.
Because she's, even then, she's talking about like how the desert doesn't necessarily love him, but she does, and all these other things. And I'm like, okay. But there's also this commonality between him being accepted by the desert and the planet and their relationship. So you're like, okay, so there's a commonality there. And then she's in all of his visions, but she doesn't have any personality in any of those visions. No. So, like, what is her purpose here?
And especially since we got the tiny snippet, and this is a spoiler, there is a quick cameo of Anna Taylor-Joy.
That was hilarious.
As his sister.
Yes.
His unborn sister grown.
Yes.
But, like, even in that split second, her acting was better than everything like that. And I'm like, I wish they would have interjected maybe some more of, like, those flashes.
Well, you have Florence Pugh, who has the thankless job of the movie.
Dude, she was as worthless a character
as anybody, but you care about her. You care about what she's doing. You care about why she's here. And she's acting so much better than Zendaya is.
Oh, my God.
Where by the end of the movie, when it's who gets the boy, who gets to marry the cute boy, and it's between Zendaya and Florence Pugh, and there's just all these looks back and forth all the time. I'm like, you didn't even like him. Yeah. Why are you upset now? You didn't like him. You kept on pushing him away and saying you weren't interested in him, and like all these other things. You didn't believe in all the things that he also didn't believe in, and like I'm tired of Romeo and Juliet romances.
And it was overdone.
It just didn't make any sense within the context of the story.
Right. And I think, honestly, that's what dragged down that first hour for me, because a lot of it was the buildup of their relationship.
And I would much rather have had that first hour be him learning the ways of the Fremen.
Yeah.
And, like, seeing him learning the language and doing all these things. And
or more in depth with his mother. Like, her going through her transition.
Finding out what the big deal was with her doing this ceremony while pregnant.
Yeah.
To the point where all the witches who are doing the ceremony freak out when they've done the ceremony.
They made the baby a demon or something, and it's like...
And we don't find out anything about it!
Nope.
The baby talks psychically to Lady Jessica, and is going to be Anya Taylor-Joy at some point later on in life. And that's it. I'm like, I would like to know more about this, actually. There's a lot more other things here that I would like to know literally anything about.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't mind, you know, all these shots of the Fremen won't accept you. You're not really a religious leader. All these other things. Because that's all the Zendaya stuff ends up coming out to, is just like them arguing about theology. And both of them agreeing like, yeah, I'm not a prophet. Yeah, you're not a prophet. And yeah, this religion fucked over the entire planet by sending out a bunch of people to, you know, grassroots create this religion here. Yeah, no, they did. And but it's just that. It's just this echo chamber back and forth for the first hour.
But then what got frustrating also is throughout the transition of him being, you know, I'm not a prophet to what he ends up becoming, everything in the prophecy keeps getting checked off, and she's still more and more dug in. Well, it's like, all right, dude, after the sixth thing has been proven right, maybe have an open mind.
And I get the idea that you have a counter to Javier Bardem, where Javier Bardem, like, you have that scene where Timothée Chalamet fully says, I am not the prophet. I am not your Messiah. And Javier Bardem's like, the Messiah would totally say that he's not the Messiah. He's definitely the Messiah. And I'm like, okay, so we do have like a counterpoint to this kind of fanaticism. But it ultimately doesn't really mean anything. And this religion does seem to be authentic on some deep spiritual level. So I'm just kind of confused by...
And it's like, in this situation, I think they would have been better suited if it wasn't such a counterpoint.
Yeah.
Like, maybe have her more in the middle saying, I can see, I was raised in this with these people in this religion, so I can see the signs of things, but I'm skeptical, instead of saying it's not true.
Or like how she has all these friends that are also skeptical. We see them more and more going over to the other side.
Exactly.
And we don't get any of that.
Yeah. But he does, every time a box gets checked, more of them come over. And it's like, all right, dude,
but we don't really see any of that.
And all the way to the very end, when it's obvious when he says to her, I will always love you. And then he says to Florence Pugh, I will take you as my bride. He's doing it not because he loves her, but because it's something that needs to be done for political marriage. Yeah. And for her to just be like, I'm not going to kneel. I'm going to stand. I'm going to storm off. It's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I hope the worm eats you.
Well, and like, you also had the stupid moment where she ties this blue ribbon that she's been wearing around her arm. And I'm like, so this is just for us as an audience, so we can be like, that one's Zendaya.
Yeah.
That one that's doing all the flips, that particular one, that's Zendaya. And it's just like, okay, all right. But even like Die Hard 2, there was a reason why they had the blue tape on the guns and whatnot. And I don't know.
This was the Marvel take your helmet off moment.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, she ties it around.
Well, when she turns to camera and gives the smolder, that was the Marvel take
the rock smolder! That is the rock smolder.
She did the full smolder to camera.
A lot in this movie.
Yeah. Just that look that's somewhere between I'm angry and I have to shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's right in between those 2 points of contact. I sound like I don't like this movie. I do like this movie. I like this movie on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
I just look at some of the decisions and I wonder, why did we do it this way?
Yeah.
Why did you have Anya Taylor-Joy come in for less than a scene? I can't even say she was in a scene. She was in a shot.
Yeah.
She was in a shot.
She sounds like what? Like
5 lines.
Or 2 to them, yeah.
And most of them are ADR'd.
Yep.
So it's like she's in one shot. She did like maybe 40 minutes of ADR work and she was in this movie. You know who really pisses me off that they were in this movie? Why the fuck was Christopher Walken in this movie? How fucking distracting was having Christopher Walken as the Emperor? That was so distracting. The entire time I had huge King Louis vibes of like, so this is what we're doing. Everything else comes to a screeching, shattering halt, and this is what we're doing now. I did not like that.
What's funny is I agree with you, but it wasn't King Louis. It was Balls of Fury.
Yeah.
Thank man.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, Christopher Walken has been cultivated for the last 20 years as a joke.
Yes.
And
this isn't Deer Hunter days.
No.
Not anymore.
No. And he can't act like he could in the Deer Hunter. No. So, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You immediately make this a joke. Like, immediately make this a joke.
It's like, it's not that you wouldn't be able to find a
this is what I'm saying.
To
even
do
someone
role.
like Jeff Bridges, who also comes in with a certain kind of cultural clout to him, that, you know, like, he's the dude and all these other things. Even he, when he plays Rooster Cogburn, you're like, oh, look how different this is. The guy can act. And I'm not saying Walken can't act. Obviously, Walken can act. But he's so in his own personality now. And that's all people
It's
want
like
from
a
him.
Nicolas Cage movie.
Yeah.
He's a great actor, but you watch a movie now saying, that's Nicolas Cage.
That's Nicolas Cage.
And same thing with Walken. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah, and it's not like The Rock or Ryan Reynolds or Zendaya where they're playing themselves. They are playing themselves, but they become this caricature of themselves.
I agree.
They play this version of themselves that we want them to be. And he might as well have started dancing in the middle of any one scene. I think that would have been just as off-putting to me as anything else that happened. Because I was just
And I agree with you, and I don't buy... Because he was so frail, because he's
old.
He's in his 80s. He was so frail that having this, like, everyone bend the knee to him, like, out of... Even Skarsgård, he looked like he was genuinely in awe and afraid of him, even though he's been trying to undercut him since the first movie. But it was like, I buy that. Like, I don't understand why you're making him the Emperor.
And that's why I say that Florence Pugh did such a good job, is because she, as the Emperor's daughter, has to pick up all the pieces of those scenes that are left over and be like, no, take us seriously. Please take us seriously.
The one thing I didn't like about her performance, though, is I wish they would have let her just use her British accent.
Yeah.
Like, she had a good American accent, but it was off-putting because I don't know if it's just because of her accent her Russian accent in the Marvel, but when she just speaks normally in her voice, I'm more drawn to that.
Yeah.
And I'm not the biggest Florence Pugh fan, but it's just when you know somebody has such a distinctive accent and you hear them speaking with an American accent, you're like,
yeah. Well, like you look at her here versus Oppenheimer. She gives a better performance in Oppenheimer
1,000
than she
times
does
better.
here.
She's so fucking good at that.
She's
movie.
amazing. But like here, she's still really good. She's just holding down this one side.
Yeah, the writing wasn't good for her character.
I loved her costuming. Her costuming was so
that
cool.
little face mask
all
thing
of
at
it,
the
all the
end
different
was
versions of
fucking
her
awesome.
costume that they had were so cool to look at, and I love that look of it. Again, the production design is there. It looks great. There were a few moments where my irises thought that they were going to burn out because they would go from these very dark tent scenes to broad open daylight in the middle of the desert, and you're like, oh my god, I can't see. But like visually, it's really good to watch. It's very enjoyable to watch. There are just some moments, like when Gurney comes back, and you're just like, so where have you been?
Yeah.
Why are you on an oil rig? What is going on? Why are you here? For a solid moment, I thought he had lost his memory.
Yeah.
And then I was also like, and who are these people that you're with? They're not Harkonnens.
He mentioned smugglers.
Smugglers. So we kind of have to assume they're smugglers, but like we literally know nothing about them.
And also, the Freemen, like, automatically kill anyone that's on a spice rig. And here, they just happen to get in enough of a scuffle that Atreides can have that back and forth with Josh Brolin and then be like, oh, stop, don't kill him.
Everybody stop. These guys are friends. We're all good.
I was like,
and it's just like, what is going on?
It was dumb.
That it just made no sense to me. Of like, as a moment, I was just like, what's happening
And
here?
as much as I like Josh Brolin, in watching it, I was like, I really wish they would have found a way. I know he died and he's not coming back, but Jason Momoa, I missed Jason Momoa. Him and Oscar Isaac, and I think that was the thing, is a lot of the secondary characters, and when I say secondary, I mean just not Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
The secondary characters in the first movie were so much better.
Much better. I would definitely
agree with
that.
In this one, they just, other than Austin Butler, other than him, there wasn't really anyone. Even Batista, he started
Batista
good.
was nothing.
Like the first scene he was in, you were like, oh, like when he's screaming, but then he just
turns into nothing.
He turned into a coward.
Just absolute nothing by the end of the movie.
They fit him.
There's at one point a moment where he's fully running away from Atreides.
Yeah.
Like after calling him out in a fight and everything, he's just full running away.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, am I supposed to be afraid of this guy? Am I supposed to not take him seriously? I can't tell. You're giving me such mixed messages. He seems completely befuddled by the entire situation.
Yes.
He seems like a giant baby who just does what he's told, which like in Mad Max, when you have, what's his name? The guy who's wearing a jock strap as a chin strap, who's the son of a Morton Joe, who picks up the engine at the end. He is a child who's just doing what he's told. That is not what's happening here. No. And it's just, you're just kind of left like, what's going on? What's happening?
He was in command of taking over Arrakis. And it's like, how is he not?
And then you have the fight with him and Josh Brolin, and it's nothing.
It
takes less than nothing.
It literally takes 2 seconds.
I'm sitting here like, so we had Drax versus Thanos 2. And this is, how did you have a worse fight between Drax and Thanos than any of the Guardians of the Galaxy
Drax
movies?
into a fucking baby.
Yeah.
I did, and like how he kissed his cousin's boots, and I'm like,
there's a lot of kissing in this movie.
dude, it was weird.
There's a lot of weird kissing in this movie. And, you know, I will never get over making Christopher Walken say Muad'Dib so many times. Just bad decisions at the end of the day. It's just like, is the movie bad? No. Is the acting bad? By and large, no. But there's just a lot of things that don't connect anywhere. And it's one of those things where, with these kind of epic movies, where when you don't have these connecting points, you're like, maybe they'll come back to it later, and they're just leaving it unconnected for a reason. Yeah. But, like, we were talking after, this movie could just be the end of the series. Like, they don't need to make more. They will. They probably will.
They're definitely going to make another one.
But, like, they don't need to, because this movie kind of closes its shell very effectively. Of, like, if there was another one, this wouldn't be, like, you know, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Where you get to the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, and you're like, this is how the fucking series ends? No, they fucking sucked, and so nobody went to see them, and so they didn't make any more. This they'll make more of, but I definitely had moments where I was like, where is this going? I thought the Harkonnens were like the big bad for like the entire thing. That's not a thing anymore. And like Baron Harkonnen, I've heard for years as this big evil guy. He ends up being kind of a nothing burger for most of this movie.
Yeah.
And there were just a lot of moments of like, there's some reveals in there, and I'm like, does that mean anything politically? Because it doesn't mean anything to me as an audience member. I don't care. I don't care who it ends up being is related to who. Not important to me. So if this means something in terms of the plot, then we can get to it. But it doesn't mean anything in terms of the plot. It's just like a reveal that means nothing. And I'm just like, I like this movie. I just end up having a lot of issues with it, which I didn't have with the first one. The first one, it was just like, there were moments like, man, when you have that much sand, it's kind of hard to parse background and foreground. You know, that was my problems with the first movie. And here I'm like, and Duncan Idaho is a dumb name. Yeah. It's a dumb name. But
no, the first movie was far superior.
Yeah, they had those weird psychics. They were nowhere in this movie. Yeah. And it's fine. I just end up kind of getting a little confused as to what I'm supposed to actually care about.
And I think, even though I think Timothée Chalamet did fine acting.
He did fine.
It was a little more noticeable in some of the action scenes, to the point that, I don't know if you heard, when he was fighting off, or squaring off against Austin Butler at the end, and he got into like his start fight pose, there was some laughter. Yeah. Because he's this scrawny little pretty boy, and it looked kind of fucking weird.
Well, he's supposed to be this god warrior. Yeah. Which I've never gotten. It's the superhero costume issue, where you can tell there's a stunt guy in it, and then they take off the mask, and you're like, Tobey Maguire wasn't doing all that. there's no way he was doing all that.
I think you're forgetting of, you know, you look at like early Brad Pitt when he was the pretty boy, but he was still
he was still jacked.
Opposing figure.
He was an Adonis.
Jacked. Yeah.
Like, there are still people 20 years later who, when they go to physical trainers and they're asked, what do you want to do? What's your goal?
Fight Club app.
Tyler Durden is my goal. Okay. That's still the main thing for almost any guy who's a millennial or older.
And he was like that from his very first movie role in Thelma and Louise, when he had a shirt. He's still jacked. But
no, I agree. Timothée Chalamet just looks small.
He does.
He looks really small.
I don't buy that he's riding a sandworm. Yeah,
and like I get this whole idea that Muad'Dib is the name for the desert mouse. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, he's a desert mouse. You see him and you don't anticipate very much out of him, but then he gets you on cunning and guile. It's like, okay, I get that.
But that's the thing, is he didn't get people on cunning and guile in this movie. He got them by physically imposing them. Well, the knife fight to end the first movie, and then he was in the fight with this, and he's riding the sandworm, and he's doing all these really physical things that you're like, no. Yeah. If he was a statistician or like a really good politician, or somebody that, like you said, use their brain and their savvy. Yeah. Okay. But you're making him into be like an Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's
he needs to be a little bigger. He would need to be a little bigger to actually be an intimidating. Like, you even look at Austin Butler. Austin Butler isn't that much bigger, but he's got more stature. His chest and his shoulders are wider. He's taller, and this is the issue. Yeah, this is the issue I have with Tom Holland. Tom Holland is in incredible shape, but he is so tiny as an individual that the entire time I'm like, who is this aggressive child? Can someone get their mother? Because Jesus, someone needs to rein in this aggressive child.
I do got to give a lot of credit, because I had seen an interview with Austin Butler talking about how he was filming that biker movie we saw the trailer for, and while he had to shoot Dune, and they were like, "You can't shave your head." So that was a makeup from his eyes all the way, and that was one of the best skull caps I've ever seen.
I kind of disagree. I found it to be extremely noticeable that he had this weird affectation over his head.
Well, the only thing I noticed was that the pronounced where the eyebrows are.
The brows. Yeah.
That's the only part that really, because I was trying to pay attention. I thought they did a decent job with it.
It's just one of those things where, like, I come off curmudgeonly, but it's really just that there's so many things I want to know more about. So when we get bogged down in the relationship between Paul and Chani. I thought her name was Johnny the whole movie.
I thought they were saying Johnny.
But when we have that conversation between them, all the various stilted conversations and tense, I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
I don't care about this. I'm more interested in what the hell is going on with Leah Seydoux than anything that's going on in here. And, you know, like all the weird politics of the witches. Like, that's interesting to me. These hush conversations, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care about this argument of whether religion is real or not, or just some way for the masses to be controlled. You're both right.
Yeah.
Everybody can be right in this situation, I guess, because from what I've seen, the religion is crazy true. Like, unlike some religions where you just say something and then you kind of make up a story to go with it, they have these magic potions that fully change who you are as an individual and open your mind to the entire universe and turn you into weird slug beings.
They actually reminded me a lot of like the Black Panther serum.
Yeah.
Because it's like, like you open your mind to the other world.
Yeah, you suddenly can know all these things that you would never know otherwise, and you basically gain the entire memory of the planet as a result. And it's like, okay, are we going to go anywhere with that? No, not really. We're going to kind of touch on it, and there's going to be a reveal, and then Paul's going to be very different afterwards, but we're not really going to go anywhere with it, and we're not going to go anywhere with the pregnant woman that has it.
And also, like, I love the introduction of Austin Butler's Fade Ruta, because you're like, oh, so this guy's a psychopath, but he's also an incredible warrior. Next thing you see, he's firing. Oh, this is another one of the cuts. This is the big cut. So he has a ship, and it's firing on where the freemen all are, like the women and children and everybody. And the other freemen, Atreides and everyone, are way the fuck, like 30 miles away, and they see the flashes of light. And he says, ready the troops, I want to go down there. And in that time of him going down, Atreus and all of them come back.
Yeah.
They get everybody, including the sick and injured, onto worms and go away before they can come down.
Yeah.
I was like, how did that fucking happen?
And Paul has a crisis of conscience during all that, too. And it's just
it's like their ship was right above them.
Did they had to go down
back when he said, "Get my troops ready. I want to go down right now."
Sorry, Lord Rua, we gotta go and get some new fuel. We're all out of fuel on
that was
this
the
one.
Most jarring. That was by far the most jarring.
That first scene with him, where he's killing his handmaidens, and you can't tell if they're horrified or sexually aroused by it.
Yeah, you couldn't tell.
What's happening here? They seem equal parts of both.
Well, it's like he has his Dracula's brides who he feeds people to.
Yeah.
But then the other ones are just servants that he
But
kills.
there's no distinction between the two. Like, you don't have, like, a visual distinction.
Well, one has an evil look on her face.
Oh, yeah. One looks happy and one looks scared. But you can't tell who's who beyond that. All the stuff with Lady Jessica, there were a lot of weird cuts there where I was like, what's happening? How long has it been? And this is going where? And what's happening now? But, like, that's the problem, is that happens a few times in this movie where you're like, and we got here how? And there's also just stuff that kind of gets glanced over. There's a whole scene where they give Paul a new name, and he's become part of the tribe. And I was just like, I feel like I'm missing out on what's happening here. The more minutia based context of what's happening here. I can understand conceptually what's happening here. He's being accepted by the crowd, but even then, Zendaya is still not accepting him as an individual. I'm just like, what is going on? I'm very confused.
And I gotta say, after having this discussion, I'm moving my grade to a B.
I would say a B.
And for those who are listening to our show, we can be curmudgeons. But we also will hold people who know better to a higher standard.
Oh, definitely.
Like Denis Villeneuve, we hold him at a very high standard as a filmmaker. So when we see the issues with this movie from a technical side, meaning the editing, the writing, that is where the grade goes down. Like, we can't just give him a good grade because there's some visual striking parts and there's some good action. It's like, it's the minutia. It's the 2.5 hours. It's the little in between scenes that usually are so great that are not this time.
See, it kind of to me felt like, and I don't know if I'm giving him an excuse, like a backdoor way out. It kind of felt like one of those things where the scenes that were very high fantasy, deep lore, like just swimming in an ocean of lore, like the witches and the Fremen society and all these other things. I feel like that was Villeneuve stuff. And then every once in a while, the studio would come in and be like, we got to have more Chalamet and Zendaya. Like they're going to bring the teenagers in. We got to have more scenes of them. They really need to be the focus of this thing. And so they put in more scenes of them. Like that's how it comes off to me, is you have those moments of deep passion for the project. And then you have these stilted conversations and tense that seem really redundant.
They're like CW moments.
Yeah. I
don't need that.
And like they don't present any new information.
No.
They just go over the same arguments over and over again. That when they introduce Rutha and they put him in this gladiatorial match and they have these guys that are drugged when they're fighting him. And I'm like, what the fuck is the purpose of that? Why? Like, I don't get it. And then there's the one guy who was the doctor in the last movie who's not drugged, and he actually has a chance to kill him. And like that guy didn't seem like that great a fighter.
No.
So now I'm like, my first thought is, so this guy that is supposed to be this amazing fighter has to have all of his opponents drugged. And when they're not drugged and not trained fighters, he barely beats them.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound intimidating.
And he has acolytes around him that are also getting involved in the fight.
Yeah. What were they? What was that whole thing where you had the xenomorph-looking motherfuckers coming in?
That was so weird.
There were just so many moments where we're like, I don't know what the context of this is.
I've seen some of those costumes of the acolytes that are around in the Lady Gaga videos. It's like, they were just weird.
I didn't understand what was I supposed to take from it. What was their role? And like, I get like, I've seen Gladiator. Okay, I know that you don't have the Emperor go out and fight in a gladiatorial match because that's fucking insane and stupid. But if you're going to have that be your plot, you have to explain what the fuck is going on to us as an audience. Because I literally see this, and it takes all this ruthlessness that we've been given of this character and bleeds it dry. It's like the scenes where the Fremen are draining all the liquid out of people. It's like it just drains all that malice out of that character, because I'm like, so he can't fight people unless they're drugged.
Yeah.
And he can't fight minorly competent doctors who aren't even warriors, they're doctors.
And then when Skarsgård's character says, don't drug the last one, being the doctor, it's like, but... So you're telling me everyone in the crowd knows that these people
knows that they're drugged, and they're still so excited that this is happening?
It doesn't make sense. It
doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
Like, none of this makes... So is this all a dog and pony show to make it look like you're powerful? Because that's antithetical to everything we've been told about the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
So I'm just these things that conflict, and they don't mesh really well. And because now we're expecting a building of the story instead of more kind of stuff being set up. You're like, so you're setting up new stuff and you're not explaining the old stuff, and you're getting distracted instead of resolving some of these plot lines. And I end up not knowing what I'm supposed to take seriously, what's supposed to be meaningful, what's not supposed to be meaningful. When Gurney is in the war chamber and only the elders are allowed to speak, and Timothée Chalamet is making his big speech, which is so against character, which I guess makes sense because he's taken this potion now. And Gurney is just like, he starts out by being like, I don't know about this, and he is, and Diane is like, well, we'll make our move in a second. And then he's like, no, I'm on board, this sounds great. And I'm like,
because he mentions his father.
Exactly.
So he's like, oh, well,
that's
he must
everything's
be okay.
forgiven. And
he's got the ring.
I'm just like, I don't know.
And then he's all bought in.
Yeah.
Gurney's
bought in 1,000,000% after that.
Literally.
Yeah, that was all he needed to hear was that he was going to be the Duke of Arrakis. And Gurney's like, fuck yeah, let's get it done, kid. Let's make it happen. You and me all day. Ride or die. And it's like, I come off hard, right?
Yeah.
I sound like I don't like this movie. I do like this movie. But I think a B minus is a closer grade for me, just because like it's not bad, but I do end up walking away from it with a lot of like, but what was the purpose of this?
Yeah. And
why did this have to happen? And why did we spend so much time on this and so little time on this?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, folks,
yeah,
we hope you enjoyed that. So once again, this has been NerdPod Generations episode 130, and that was our little take on Dune Part 2. We do hope you check back next week and the week after, which will either the week after or week after that is Ghostbusters. I can't remember.
I think the
it might be 3 weeks from today.
I think Ghostbusters is the 22nd. I want to say is when Ghostbusters drops.
So be like 3 weeks from today. We're going to be doing a Ghostbusters review. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But next week we do have a interesting one planned that we're both dreading. The death of superheroes.
I've been trying to avoid negativity in my life, and Steve's like, "Let's watch Aquaman 2 in the Marvels," and I'm like, "Oh, Steve, no."
And let me tell you, it's so much negativity. I can't wait to hear these rants next week.
No.
So, folks, once again, NerdPod Generations episode 130. Please find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you like and subscribe. Also, go to youtube.com under NerdPod Generations. Look up all the past videos. Make sure you like and subscribe that channel as well.
You can find me at judsubstudios.work under the Bronx Division tab.
You can find me in the ether.
Yes, our logo is by Kortney Howell.
It's so awesome.
Our theme is by Brennan Williams and James Connelly.
Also awesome.
And we will be back next week with the commiserate amount of rage that I have been just internalizing.
I can't wait for you
and
to
not
watch
using. I've been doing so
these.
many other things, Groundhog's Day and Palm Springs and all these. Oh, and I'm playing Baldur's Gate, and even when it's not fun, it's still kind of fun. And no. I am your father, Luke.
Baby P.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say. Baby P.
Baby P.
That's all I'm gonna say.
God.
Have a great week, everyone.
See you later, friends and enemies.